The line and the stars. The void between stars was never meant to be a battlefield. Captain Maya Chen knew this as she stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, her knuckles white, as she gripped the command rail. The holographic display before her showed what command had already deemed a lost cause. 3 human warships against a Shriek armada of 27. Status report, she demanded, her voice steadied despite the weight pressing on her chest. Lieutenant Cato's fingers danced across his console. Shriek vessels continuing their approach, Captain. ETA to weapons range. 17 minutes. The refugee ships are still 16 hours from the jump point. And there it was, the impossible math. The Aldari refugees, nearly 30,000 souls packed into civilian transports never meant for long-haul journeys, couldn't possibly reach safety before the Shriek caught them. Their homeworld had fallen just 3 days ago, the crystalline cities that had stood for millennia reduced to glass dust under the Shriek's relentless bombardment. "They're hailing us again," Communications Officer Patel said, her dark eyes meeting Chen's. "Audio only." Chen nodded once. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge wasn't human. It crackled and warped, the translation software struggling with the complex harmonics of the Aldari language. But the desperation needed no translation. "Human vessels, we beg for your protection. Our children, our future, they are all that remains of our world. The Shriek will show no mercy. They have followed us across 3 systems. Please, help us." The message cut off, leaving only the hum of the Defiant systems and the heavy silence of her crew. Chen felt their eyes on her, waiting. Military protocol was clear. The 3 vessels under her command were to hold the line at Junction 9 and prevent Shriek incursion into the Soul Corridor. Nothing about sacrificing themselves for a refugee fleet from a civilization that had, until their apocalypse, refused all human alliance overtures. Captain, her XO, Commander Jackson, approached, voice low. "The Aldari refused our help when the Shriek first appeared in their system. They called us violent primitives, said they'd rather trust in diplomacy." "And how did that work out for them?" Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. Jackson's face remained impassive. 3 billion dead. Their homeworld a cinder. Chen turned back to the display, watching the red dots of the Shriek vessels advancing. The Shriek didn't negotiate, didn't take prisoners. In the 6 years since they'd emerged from the uncharted regions, humanity had learned only one thing about them with certainty. They consumed everything in their path. "Orders from Fleet Command are clear," Jackson continued. "Hold Junction 9 at all costs. The refugees aren't our responsibility." Chen closed her eyes for a moment. "And if it were human refugees, Commander? If it were Earth burning instead of Aldari Prime?" The question hung between them, unanswered but understood. When she opened her eyes again, her decision was made. "Comms, acknowledge the Aldari transmission. Tell them we're moving to intercept." Patel's fingers hesitated over her console. "Captain, you heard me." Chen straightened her shoulders. "Tactical, I want all 3 ships in scatter formation. Reactor to 100%. Weapons hot." The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as her orders were relayed. She could feel Jackson's eyes boring into her back. "This is suicide," he said quietly. "Maybe." Chen's gaze remained fixed on the advancing Shriek armada. Or maybe it's just being human. The Defiant shuddered as it accelerated, flanked by its sister ships, the Intrepid and the Valiant. On the display, the blue triangles of the human vessels moved to place themselves between the refugees and the oncoming storm. 16 minutes later, the first Shriek missiles streaked across the void. "Evasive maneuvers," Chen shouted as the bridge klaxons wailed. "Return fire, all batteries." The Defiant rolled hard to port, its point defense lasers catching 3 of the incoming projectiles. The 4th struck their starboard shields, the impact reverberating through the hull like a massive bell. "Shields holding at 83%, reported Lieutenant Reyes from Tactical. Firing solution locked. Returning fire." The Defiant's railguns spat hyper-accelerated slugs toward the nearest Shriek vessel, while its missile tubes disgorged a swarm of countermeasures. On the screen, the Intrepid and Valiant mirrored their actions, creating a wall of fire between the refugees and their pursuers. Yet for every Shriek ship damage, two more took its place. Their black, chitinous hulls absorbed punishment that would have vaporized human vessels, and their return fire grew more precise with each exchange. "They're adapting to our evasion patterns," Jackson mourned as another impact rocked the ship. "Shields at 61%. Chen gripped the rail tighter. "They always do. Alter course, random vectors. Keep them guessing." But the Shriek were learning faster than usual. A coordinated barrage caught the Valiant mid-maneuver, overwhelming its shields and tearing through its port nacelle. The ship listed, venting atmosphere and debris. Valiant reports critical damage. Patel's voice cracked. Engine core destabilizing. Chen watched in horror as the Valiant's icon on her display flickered. "Order immediate evacuation. We'll cover them." "Captain," Kaido interrupted, his voice tinged with confusion. "I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the Shriek vessels. They're redirecting power from weapons to some kind of sensory array." Chen frowned. "Show me." The tactical display shifted, highlighting strange energy patterns emanating from the Shriek ships. They were focusing on the wounded Valiant, but not firing. Scanning it. "They're studying how it's breaking apart," Chen realized aloud. "Learning our structural weaknesses." The thought crystallized into inspiration. Tactical. Target their sensory nodes. Not the weapons. Hit where they're gathering data. Reyes adjusted his targeting parameters. Firing solution acquired. "Fire everything we've got." The Defiant's remaining arsenal launched toward the Shriek formation, joined seconds later by the Intrepids. This time, instead of aiming for critical systems, they focused on the strange, antenna-like protrusions that had appeared on the Shriek hulls. The effect was immediate and startling. 3 Shriek vessels reeled from the impacts, their coordinated movements suddenly erratic. 2 collided, their hulls cracking open like split carapaces. "They can't adapt if they can't analyze," Chen breathed. "Comms, get me the Intrepid." Captain Franco's grim face appeared on screen. "I see it, Chen. We hit their eyes and ears. We need to buy more time. The Aldari are still hours from the jump point." Chen's mind raced through options, each more desperate than the last. "What about the asteroid field in Sector 7? Franco's eyes widened in understanding. "The mining charges. They're still there from the Helium-3 operation." "Exactly." Chen turned to navigation. "Plot a course for the Kuiper debris field. Maximum burn. And get me those mining detonator codes." As the human ships changed course, the Shriek followed, their formation now ragged but still overwhelming in number. The wounded Valiant limped behind, escape pods jettisoning from its shattered hull. "They're pursuing, Captain," Jackson reported. "But at reduced speed. They seem cautious now." Chen allowed herself the ghost of a smile. "Good. They should be." The Defiant led the retreat toward the dense asteroid field that marked the edge of the system. Behind them, the Aldari refugee ships continued their slow journey toward the jump point, now with precious extra minutes bought with human blood. As they approached the field, Chen addressed her crew. "What we're about to do hasn't been attempted before. We're going to scatter those mining charges throughout our defensive perimeter. When the Shriek follow us in, we detonate. The blast radius will catch us too," Jackson pointed out. "Even if we're at maximum distance." "Yes," Chen agreed simply. "It will." Understanding passed between them. No further words were needed. The Defiant and Intrepid entered the asteroid field, their nimble maneuvers a stark contrast to the lumbering Shriek vessels. As they weaved between the massive rocks, they deployed the mining charges, hundreds of them, set to proximity detonation, and linked to a central command. "All charges deployed," Reyes confirmed. "Awaiting your order, Captain." Chen watched as the Shriek armada entered the field, their black ships breaking formation to navigate the obstacles. They were committing fully to the pursuit, abandoning their disciplined approach in their eagerness to destroy the humans who had damaged them. She took a deep breath. "Send the detonation signal on my mark. All hands, brace for impact." The bridge crew secured themselves. In the tense silence, Chen thought of Earth, of blue oceans and green forests she might never see again, of the 30,000 Aldari who might now have a chance. Mark. A heartbeat of silence, then the universe turned white. The explosion rippled outward, a chain reaction of devastating force. Asteroids shattered into deadly shrapnel, tearing through the Shriek vessels like paper. The Defiant bucked violently, systems failing across the board as the shockwave hit. Chen was thrown from her feet, her head striking the deck. Through blurring vision, she saw emergency lights flashing, heard the screams of metal as the ship fought to hold itself together. "Damage report," she croaked, pulling herself up. Jackson's face appeared above her, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. "We're still here, Captain." Somehow, his expression held something between disbelief and awe. "And we're not alone." On the cracked display, the debris field had been transformed into a graveyard of Shriek vessels. But amidst the destruction, the Defiant and Intrepid still lived, damaged, barely operational, but alive. And on the far side of the system, the Aldari ships continued their journey, now with a fighting chance. Chen looked at the devastation they had caused, at the price they had paid. "Send a message to the refugees," she ordered, her voice finding its strength again. "Tell them to keep going. Tell them humanity stands with them now." As the message was sent, the first responses from the Aldari fleet began to appear on screen, not just gratitude, but something more, something that looked remarkably like respect. Ashes of victory. 3 days after the asteroid field detonation, the UES Defiant drifted at the edge of the Kuiper Belt, its hull patched with emergency sealant, and its systems running on minimal power. Captain Maya Chen stood in what remained of the bridge, surveying damage reports that scrolled endlessly across her tablet. "Life support is stable," Commander Jackson reported, his uniform torn and stained with hydraulic fluid. "But main engines are still offline. The reactor took heavy damage in the blast." Chen nodded, feeling every hour of the past 3 days in her bones. "And the Intrepid?" Captain Franco reports similar status. "They managed to restore communications, but propulsion is down to emergency thrusters only." It wasn't a victory. Not yet. They had bloodied the Shriek, destroyed perhaps half their pursuing force, but the rest had withdrawn rather than been eliminated, and intelligence suggested more were coming. "The Aldari?" Chen asked, though she already knew the answer from her last briefing. "Made it to the jump point 6 hours ago. They're safely in Sol-controlled space now." Jackson's expression softened slightly. "Fleet Command has acknowledged our actions." Chen arched an eyebrow. "Acknowledged, not commended. You disobeyed direct orders, Captain." "I did." She set down the tablet. "I'd do it again." Before Jackson could respond, Lieutenant Patel's voice crackled over the damaged comm system. "Captain, we're being hailed. It's an Aldari vessel. They're requesting permission to dock." Chen exchanged a surprised glance with Jackson. "An Aldari vessel. Here. Grant permission and direct them to Auxiliary Docking Bay 3. It's the only one still pressurized." 30 minutes later, Chen stood in the docking bay as the sleek, crystalline shuttle of Aldari design eased through the force field. Unlike the utilitarian angles of human vessels, the Aldari craft resembled an enormous teardrop, its surface refracting light in hypnotic patterns. The shuttle's hatch dissolved rather than opened, revealing 3 Aldari. They moved with fluid grace despite the ship's artificial gravity fluctuations, their tall, willowy forms draped in luminescent garments that seemed to shift color with each movement. Their faces, with large, multifaceted eyes and no visible mouth, betrayed no emotion to human understanding. The central figure stepped forward, raising a six-fingered hand in what Chen recognized as an Aldari greeting. "Captain Chen, I am Elder Turan of the Aldari Council." The words came not from the being itself, but from a small device at its throat, translating thought patterns into human speech. Chen returned the gesture, bowing slightly. "Elder, your people are safe in Sol space. Why have you returned to a combat zone?" The Aldari's eyes shifted color, from deep violet to a shimmering blue. "To bring you this." It gestured, and one of its companions stepped forward, holding a crystalline cube that pulsed with internal light. "What is it?" Chen asked, eyeing the device warily. "Knowledge," Turan replied. "About the Shriek, about why they hunt us, and about how you, humans, might be the key to stopping them." The Elder's companions placed the cube on a nearby crate. It hummed softly, projecting a holographic display that showed the Shriek home system, a place no human or Aldari probe had ever returned from. "For centuries, we believed diplomacy could solve any conflict," Turan continued. "When the Shriek appeared, we sent emissaries. They sent back the emissaries' heads. We offered resources, territory, technology. They took it all and demanded more." The hologram shifted, showing Aldari Prime, once a world of crystal spires and floating gardens, now a blackened husk. "We did not understand them because we could not imagine their nature. The Shriek do not consume for survival or conquest. They consume because they must fill a void that cannot be filled." The Elder's eyes darkened. "But you humans, you fight differently." Chen studied the projections, which now showed analysis of the asteroid field battle. "Your point, Elder? The Shriek learn by consuming, by taking apart and absorbing. It is instinct to them, not strategy." Turan gestured to the display. "But you tricked them. You made their strength into weakness. No species has done this before." Jackson stepped forward. "With respect, Elder, we got lucky, and we nearly died doing it. Perhaps the Aldari's translator rendered what might have been amusement, but the remaining Shriek vessels have withdrawn to the outer system. They are hesitating, uncertain." Chen felt a flicker of hope. "They're afraid of us." "Not afraid. Reassessing. The Shriek have not faced true resistance in the 17 systems they have consumed. You are an anomaly they cannot categorize." Turan manipulated the cube, and the display changed to show sensor readings of the remaining Shriek vessels. "They have called for reinforcements. A larger armada approaches. But there is a vulnerability we have discovered, hidden in the data you collected during your battle." The display zoomed in on the strange sensory nodes Chen had targeted. "These structures are not merely sensors. They are the physical manifestation of the Shriek collective consciousness. Destroy enough of them simultaneously, and their ability to adapt, to learn, is temporarily disabled." Chen leaned forward, studying the data. "How long do we have before their reinforcements arrive?" 48 of your hours, Turan replied. "Not enough time for your fleet to reach us, but perhaps enough time for what I propose." The Elder outlined a plan so audacious that Chen's first instinct was to dismiss it as suicidal. But as the Aldari explained the technical details, she began to see its potential. "You want to use your remaining ships as bait," she summarized. "Draw the Shriek into formation around them. Meanwhile, we take the Defiant and Intrepid, loaded with your crystalline technology, directly into their midst using some kind of stealth field. Phase displacement," Turan corrected. "It will render your vessels temporarily out of sync with normal spacetime. The Shriek will not detect you until you are among them." Jackson shook his head. "And then what? Our weapons systems are barely functional. You will not need them." The Elder gestured, and the hologram showed the crystalline technology they propose to install on the human ships. This will generate a cascading resonance wave tuned specifically to disrupt the Shriek collective consciousness. When detonated at the center of their formation, it will sever their connection to each other, turning them from an intelligent, coordinated force into individual creatures. Chen finished, understanding dawning. Creatures that don't know how to function alone. Tyron's eyes pulsed with approval. Precisely. It took 24 grueling hours to prepare. The Aldari technicians worked alongside human engineers, integrating their crystalline technology into the damaged human vessels. The Defiant and Intrepid would carry the resonance generators, while the remaining Aldari ships would position themselves as tempting targets to draw the Shriek into the perfect formation. As the final preparations were completed, Chen found herself standing with Elder Tyron in the Defiant's observation deck, looking out at the stars. "Your people have suffered greatly," she said quietly. The Elder's eyes dimmed. "As have many before us. The Shriek have consumed 17 civilizations that we know of, some older than our own. Why help us, after we refused to aid you initially?" Tyron turned to face her. "Because when it mattered most, when our children cried out," you answered. "Not your government, not your fleet. You." Chen felt the weight of those multifaceted eyes upon her. "We might not survive this, Elder." "No," the Aldari agreed. "But your actions will. Your choice. That is what makes humans different from the Shriek. And from us. We believed peace was the natural state of the universe. The Shriek believe consumption is. But you humans." The translator paused, as if searching for the right words. "You believe in possibility, in changing what is into what could be." The final hour before engagement found the human and Aldari vessels in position. The Shriek fleet had consolidated around the remnants of their advance force, forming a massive chitinous cloud of destruction at the edge of the system. "Phase displacement generators online," reported Lieutenant Reyes from his jury-rigged tactical station. "Resonance wave calibrated to Aldari specifications." Chen surveyed her bridge crew, exhausted, injured, but determined. "This is a one-way mission," she reminded them. "The displacement field will collapse once we activate the resonance. There won't be time to escape the blast radius." No one spoke. No one needed to. "The Aldari bait ships are in position," Jackson confirmed. "The Shriek are moving to intercept." Chen took a deep breath. "Activate phase displacement on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." Reality shifted around them. The view outside the ship blurred, colors bleeding into one another as the Defiant and Intrepid slipped between the layers of normal spacetime. It was disorienting, nauseating, but it worked. On the sensors, the Shriek vessels showed no reaction as the two human ships glided directly into their midst. "We're at the center of their formation," Kaido confirmed, his voice strained from the effects of the displacement field. "Ready to initiate resonance wave." Chen looked to Jackson, who gave a single solemn nod. "Initiate." The crystalline devices integrated throughout both ships began to pulse with blinding light. The displacement field wavered, then collapsed, revealing the Defiant and Intrepid suddenly materialized in the heart of the Shriek Armada. For one frozen moment, nothing happened. Then, the resonance wave erupted outward, not as a physical force, but as a cascade of energy that rippled through space itself. The effect on the Shriek was immediate and catastrophic. Their ships began to move erratically, colliding with each other, weapons firing randomly. The coordinated swarm had become a chaotic mass of individual vessels, each suddenly cut off from the hive mind that directed them. On the Defiance bridge, systems were failing as the resonance wave's feedback tore through human technology as well. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. The lights flickered and died. Reactor containment failing. Someone shouted through the smoke. 2 minutes to critical breach. Chen struggled to her feet, blood trickling from her ears, a side effect of the resonance wave. Through the viewport, she could see the Shriek fleet tearing itself apart in confusion. "Get to the escape pods," she ordered, helping the wounded crewmen up. All hands abandoned ship. As the evacuation began, Chen found herself at Tyron's side. The Elder's luminescent skin had dimmed, damaged by the resonance. "It worked," Chen said, supporting the wounded Aldari. "Yes." Tyron's translator crackled with interference. "But the wave is unstable, more powerful than we calculated. It will continue to expand. Chen froze. How far? Far enough to reach your colony at Proxima Centauri. If left unchecked, it must be contained. Understanding dawned. Someone would need to stay behind to modulate the resonance generators, to ensure they destroyed the shriek, but didn't expand beyond this system. Go, Tyron said, pulling away from Chen's support. I will remain. No, Chen countered. This is my ship. My responsibility. The Aldari's eyes shifted to a color Chen had never seen before, something between sorrow and respect. Your evacuation pods cannot support Aldari life functions. I cannot leave regardless. Before Chen could argue further, the deck lurched beneath them as another system failed. 1 minute to reactor breach, the computer announced calmly. Tyron placed a 6-fingered hand on Chen's shoulder. Live, Captain. Tell our story. Remember what was sacrificed here. Hesitating only a moment longer, Chen nodded. I will. She joined the last escape pod, watching through its small viewport as the Defiant and Intrepid floated amidst the chaos of the disintegrating Shriek fleet. As the pods accelerated away, she saw the resonance wave suddenly contract, pulling back from its expansion. Tyron's final act. When the reactors finally breached, the explosion that consumed both human ships and the entire Shriek Armada was contained within a perfect sphere of light, like a new star briefly born and extinguished. 3 days later, a UEF rescue cruiser recovered the escape pods. Chen stood in its medical bay, watching through a viewport as they approached Earth, that blue jewel hanging in the void. They're calling it a miracle, Jackson said, joining her. His arm was in a sling, his face still bearing the marks of their ordeal. The complete destruction of a Shriek Armada. The saving of 30,000 Aldari. Fleet Command is suddenly very pleased with your initiative. Chen said nothing, her eyes fixed on the approaching planet. The Aldari Council has formally requested alliance with Earth, Jackson continued. Their ambassador said something interesting. Said that of all the species they've encountered, only humans would risk everything for strangers. They're wrong, Chen finally spoke. Tyron proved that. Jackson nodded slowly. Maybe that's the point. Maybe we bring that out in each other. Outside, Earth grew larger, its continents and oceans coming into view. Somewhere down there, children were growing up who would never know how close the darkness had come, or how it had been pushed back by those who refused to let others face it alone. The Shriek will return, Chen said quietly. They always do.